Brilliant. So thank you so much, Liz Carney, for joining me here on Silver Tent TV. And I'm really excited to chat with you because the reason that I got back in touch with you this time is because I've been watching you choose to follow your heart, come what may, no matter how uncomfortable that sometimes feels. And it's not only that, there's the passion that you have for helping others that are like, I've known you for something like, I don't know, it must be 9 years now.
Mm.
And that's never faltered. Whenever we talk or I hear you talk about the work that you do with people, you are so the phrase that comes to mind is like a live wire. And there's that real sense of being plugged into the mains and that real determination to serve somebody so that they can follow their heart come what may as well. Although I don't think you call it that quite. But I'd love it if you would share a little bit about the current book that you're in the process of editing. So this is your second book now, isn't it? And you've done really exceptionally well with the first book too. So do you want to share a little bit about that and the passion behind what's brought them to the surface, really?
Okay, sure. Thank you, Francesca. Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here. So, where shall I start? Shall I start with the first book? The first one
Yeah.
is called Totally Real: A Blueprint to Reboot Your Life. And there's a little bit of my story and how I got there, but the main thing is about bringing to life the patterns that I see in clients, the patterns of typically women 50 and above who get to that point in life where something triggers them to like enough's enough. I can't do this anymore. Yeah, maybe it's a divorce, maybe it's a job loss, maybe it's emptiness, maybe it's the death of a parent, an illness. Who knows? But there's either a trigger or a sudden like, I just can't live like this anymore. What the heck happened? And there's patterns that I noticed to do with how they have over the years suppressed their identity and ignored their intuition and not used their imagination or overused their imagination to imagine things that are just not happening. And so there's a thing around the patterns. And then it evolved into introducing what I call my life reboot protocol. And that sounds a bit scary, but in reality, it's a framework. And for want of a better way of explaining it, it is a problem solving methodology, a problem solving framework that you can apply, in this case, to a small part of your life, just focus on one aspect or the whole of it. So, reboot is an acronym. Funny that. So, the R is for review, because reviewing your life, where am I now? In my mind, it is absolutely vital that if you do not know where you are now and the scale of what is going on and what you want to fix, it is next to impossible to actually find the right solution or an appropriate solution. Most people stop part way and they don't go deep enough to find out what's really going on. The E is about energy, about evaluating your energy and all the energy vampires. Who is taking your time and your energy that you do not want? And that links very much into the review, what exactly is the problem? And who's involved in it? The B is baseline. This is about baselining the vision. It's the where do I want to go now instead? Okay. And getting clear. And I don't do just the vision board or just the minutia. People tend to go one way or the other. I do both because I'm a believer in both. When I first got introduced to vision boards, by the way, they were called prosperity maps, which I love. I think that is such a nice way of looking at it. And I see so many people making mistakes with vision boards. We're not going to go into that, but I have a different way of visioning. And after baselining the vision, then you know exactly where do I want to go. You got the big picture, the big goal. The first O is um, organize your objectives. It's about objectives. It's breaking that goal down into manageable chunks so that you can see where you are. Because most people don't think about that in the context of their life. Yeah, it's just, you know, woe is me and I want to be there instead. It's like, hang on, where are you? Where do you want to be? How can we get there? Let's break it down. The next O is optimize your plan because typically, you know, fail to plan, plan to fail. And so, on those objectives, I help people create a proper actionable plan to move towards each objective because if you meet your objectives, you achieve your goal, solve the problem. End of. And the T on the end of it is transformation because no change is actually complete unless you truly transform, unless you know how to sustain it. So, this is the sustainability piece about what to do the next time life throws a curveball. It's about having the resource and the strength to overcome that, even if it means you go back to the beginning. But that's the point. And my mum actually said, "Well, you don't reboot just once; you're always rebooting." That is exactly true. And if you think about it like a computer, if you've ever sat in front of the whirling circle of doom when the computer is stuck, why is it stuck? It's stuck because it's overwhelmed. So too many tabs open, too much stuff going on. And life is just like that too. Humans get stuck, humans get overwhelmed. So that's what the reboot protocol is. It's about how to get yourself started again when you're living life with too many tabs open, essentially. So that is what I introduce in that first book. And you asked about the one that I'm editing at the moment, and it never really struck me as a follow on, but you've just made that beautiful segue. Or in my mind, it's just come through as a beautiful segue because as I was talking and I was talking about the transformation and the sustaining change, the second book is called The Human Side of Change. And with the strap line of feel it, lead it, change what happens next. And so there is obviously there is the individual piece that goes through that. How can you as an individual deal with change? But also there are tips for managers and leaders in organizations who are often sorely lacking with how they understand the needs of their human employees. So it takes that thread all the way through. So it's about what can you do as an individual, but also how can you better understand as a leader or a manager in an organization so that you can encourage people to embrace change. And ultimately, that means if you've got an organization where this is the culture, as an organization, you're likely to get more of what you want rather than less because everybody's in that zone of continuous improvement and change. So all of this really is based on what I used to do in the corporate world for many years, which was business process improvement and solving problem solving. I ran innovation programs. I trained people in business process improvement. I coached many projects over the years, having trained people to improve business processes. So what I'm about now really is helping people not to improve business processes unless they need that, but to improve the process of life because life is a process. And the tools and techniques in the reboot protocol are exactly that. They are adapted from business process improvement and it works brilliantly.
Wow. I could so see your passion and your excitement. And as you were talking about that sense of needing to be able to sustain that transformation, and I was thinking, how many of us humans find change really challenging? And even when we're having a shabby time, and we know that actually we need to change, if we're going to change the outcome, we're going to need to change something within, can still be really challenging to do that, can't it? And I think to go from something, I'm not sure these are the right words, but from something that's very sort of mainstream, like doing a job, let's say, to following your heart, that requires huge change in, I think, the way that we think, the way that we look at maybe what we deserve, that kind of thing. And I can imagine you having like an amazing amount of fun exploring with people that shift from this is what I do and this and I do it to look after myself and my family kind of thing. And then but this is what I would love to do and I don't know how to make that change. And I feel with you that you walk your talk because when I first met you, you'd already seen the house in Italy, I believe, that you really wanted, but you didn't get it quite then, did you? But that was like you had complete clarity of what you were after. Do you want to share a little bit about what 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 was entailed in really following your heart to get the house that you really, really wanted?
Okay, yeah, I'll share that. A little bit of magic involved there, but also it's the universe responding, and we don't do this often enough, and we don't believe it. And even I have to stop myself and go, "You've done it before. You can do it again." So the first time I came out here, I saw a beautiful house, um, and it ticked all the boxes. Ticked all the boxes that I gave the agent, and I went back home and I thought about it. And then I went, nah, it's not right. It's absolutely not right. Um, and I then sat and I thought, why isn't it right? And I came up with why it wasn't right. I went back to the agent and I said, this is the problem. What I want instead is something that has more flow. So I came out again and we pull up just around the corner and parked in the piazza. And he said, it's just around the corner. And so as we turn around the corner, I noticed the name of the street. The street name is Via della Fontana, Fountain Street. So there we are already in flow. And I walked into this house, and downstairs you can go through every room. There's doors through doors. So there's you come in the front door, turn right into the dining room. The dining room leads into the kitchen. You can go outside from the kitchen. You can go the other way and you can go into the utility room. There's a pantry and a loo off there. And also there's a door that comes into this room, which is my office study downstairs lounge. And I can go back out of that door and into the dining room. So the flow downstairs is absolutely superb. When you get to the next floor, I have 3 floors. Get to the next floor, and there's now 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms on the first floor. Well, actually, one of the bedrooms is actually my upstairs lounge because it has a door out onto the terrace on that level, and it also has the doors to the second floor. So you've also got that flow. I can go out. I can keep walking around from room to room if you like, but it's still perfectly possible for anybody that stays to have total privacy. It's not like you have to walk through people's rooms. And then the top floor, when that is finished, because it's not finished yet, there will be 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. So the construction is in the first bathroom is up, and what has to happen? It's ready for tiling and for the toilet and everything to go in. The bedroom is boarded. The ceiling, I don't think the ceiling's finished, but it's been insulated and boarded. So that one's nearly ready to go. The other 2 rooms have got to go through the same process. There is also a terrace off that level. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So we went up there and I have the most spectacular view. So I can see um, um, I can see mountains. Okay, I'm just trying to remember the first mountains, but I can then see in the next one is Roccaraso, which is one of the main ski areas, which is about an hour and a half from here, and then I see the Maiole. So I literally almost surrounded by mountains, and below me it's vineyards and olive groves. And to the right, I can't quite see the sea, but it's very, very close. And if the ridge had a little dip in it, there's a ridge over there, and I could see the sea. So it's this beautiful space between the lake and the mountains. The lake being, the water, even though it's the Adriatic, which is what kept coming through in dreams and things. And the image, the way the mountains are, is exactly what I kept visualizing, even though I didn't know where it was. So I'm on this terrace, and the guy took a picture of me, and he said, "This is it, isn't it?" And I said, "Yes, but how do you know?" He said, "I can tell by the look on your face." Right. So he took a photo of me. That was interesting because for me, that put me in this house. And I did a little bit of magic-y protection and said, "This is my house." But he positioned me there too. So that was the house, but I still didn't have the money to do it. The money was there and then it wasn't. And so that was a bit chaotic. I came home. I couldn't commit to it, but I didn't give up. So he sold it. He sold it though. And I was devastated. But I thought, no, this isn't over. Then it's back on the market. This happened twice.
Wow.
But something happened, and the other people, they didn't sell their houses. Whatever happened, they were not in a position to commit. So then one day I see it's back on the market, and I had my money then. So I'm like, yeah, it's mine. But it didn't, there was some more in the middle, if you like, because when I say I didn't give up, I would lie in bed as I'm dozing off to sleep, and I would walk through this house in my mind. I visualized it. You know how I described it to you and how I could go from room to room. Obviously, I can see the rooms and exactly what was there. I can see the floors and the ceilings and everything. And so I visualized it. I used to walk around the house, every single room of this house. And that was my journey every night. And I'd come back down the stairs and I would go out onto the first terrace on the ground floor, and I've got tables out there and chairs, and there's people eating and drinking and laughing, and that emotion from that is what I did over and over and over again until this house, suddenly I spotted it back on the market again, and I said, right, I have my money, it's mine. And I was all set to come and sign on the dotted line, and then COVID hit. So I couldn't come. But I'm still thinking this is not over. I then get a phone call in late May of 2020 saying we can get you into the notary's office on at the beginning of July. What do you want to do? Can you get here? I went,
Wow.
you bet I can get here. Because there was a space. There was a space in that whole pandemic where everything moved again before it locked down for the longer period. And that was the space that I took advantage of. So in that moment, I said, yes, I'm coming. But also in that moment, I thought, how am I going to do this? Because the original plan, I wasn't sure if I was 100% ready to come and move. In my mind, I was thinking, I will renovate the property, go backwards and forwards. Eventually, I'll move. But in that moment, I made the decision, no, I'm going to get stuck in the wrong place. So I'm going.
Wow.
So my furniture left on the 30th of June. I left on the 3rd of July. This could have gone horribly wrong. but there was never any concept of it going wrong. I went to the notary's office on the 7th of July. So I actually had my furniture on the way, and I was here with the dog and two cats ready to sign. I didn't even own a house at that point. If it had
I,
gone wrong, I have absolutely no idea what I would. But it never entered my head. Nothing was going to go wrong. Unfortunately, it didn't. So on
but
7th of
that's
July,
commitment, isn't it? That's commitment when you turn up with everything before it's even gone through. I mean, I just love it's kind of like audacious. I can imagine the universe just saying, I'm going to have to let her have that house because that is mad what she's just done. And I just want to just stay with that for a minute because what I realized is that I don't know why he went to Italy. Like, what was it? Like, I can just imagine people saying, but what about your family and your friends? And like, didn't you have an environment that you loved being? And suddenly you're going somewhere where you don't know anyone. And I don't think you even spoke the language, did you?
no, no, that's
And what
absolutely.
what was the catalyst? What was going on in your heart that got
What
you to
was
follow that prompt?
I just was not in the right place, and I lived in this beautiful cottage, um, in a beautiful part of Hampshire. No light pollution, no nothing. We had fields and trees, and it was stunning. Um, but it wasn't right. There was an element also of the fact that I'd sold my house, and basically the money I made had gone on rent because I had a portable mortgage, which I took out deliberately. When it came to port it, I wasn't allowed to port it. So I got stuck and ended up having to rent, which was getting more and more frustrating, as you can imagine, because my money's just disappearing. And I thought they're not going to let me back onto the housing market because I basically um, got myself out of it, and they wouldn't let me back in. So partly it's like, where can I buy a house? And randomly, this part came up, and the properties are huge and an awful lot less expensive to buy. I mean, renovation is interesting, um, and the cost of living is. Sometimes I think sometimes I think it's cheaper, sometimes I think it's not, and it just. But when you haven't got rent and you haven't got a mortgage, it's all relative. It's what you eat and what you do. Yeah. So you can live like that. And I kept having this vision, if you like, of this house, and all the words and that kept coming into my mind was between the lake and the mountains. And I'm like, where is it? Where is it? Show it to me. And when I stood on that top terrace here, that's when I thought, there's the mountains. And I said, but it's not a lake. And he said, it's a blooming big lake. It's the sea. I remember he said, won't that do you? I'm like, yeah, because the way the mountains are, the way they sort of curve around, that is exactly what I pictured. And I'd never seen it. And it's right there.
Wow, wow. And so I know that there's a lot more of the story, and we won't have time for it all, but has it lived up to what your heart wanted? Because it's not been the easiest of times for you there. You were there during lockdown, and other things happened that were pretty challenging. But does it live up to your heart's expectation, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, I wouldn't be anywhere else. I have to honestly say that anywhere I've lived in the world, this feels like home. When I get off the plane coming back, I'm like, I'm home. And when I walk through this door, I think this is home. It's mine. And I love it. I'm desperately wanting to get it finished now, and I'm doing my visualization process on the top floor. I mean, I was always visualizing it done, but I'm getting more specific with the details now, and the terrace down below and the pools. the pools, the pool, the pool.
I was like, that sounds very interesting. How big is this place?
No, only one pool, and
As far as you're aware so far.
well, that's all I want. And then to have the proper pathway down into my land, I have oak trees. I have about 18 olive trees, and it is an awesome space to sit and contemplate or watch the world go by or do nothing, just go for a walk. It's pretty overrun again at the moment. So, but we've never got all the way up to the top. There's got about 2/3, and then there's all kinds of giant cactus and stuff. So the path was there, um, and I've had people digging out the path for me. And that, I think, once I've got the complete path that can go from bottom to top or top to bottom, that is then the rest of the flow, and everything starts to fall into place. I'm nearly there with that. Hopefully I'll get it done this summer with somebody that doesn't build a path across next door. They actually put it on my land. Don't go there. No, it hasn't been. It hasn't been always easy. The Italian bureaucracy can be fun. I have an interesting situation going on at the moment with the Italian equivalent of HMRC, but I think we're nearly there now. So
Brilliant.
set the intention that all of that goes away. So yeah, it's hard to explain, but it does fill my heart being here. Of course, I've made friends. The hardest part is now having a grandson that I don't see that often, but he's obviously he's 18 months now, so they call me, and now he can actually say grandma. And the beauty of it was they called me one day last week, and my son said he's just been sitting there having his breakfast and he keeps saying grandma, grandma. So we called you.
Oh, sweet.
And that is just so lovely. And he actually said, Grandma, I love you. I'm like, wow, this is so cute. And he did all of that. This was not my son telling him. I mean, he is definitely a being that has been here before. What that child does and knows is something else. So that's a challenge. But I go back from time to time. They will come here, hopefully this year, depends. And then we'll get into a routine. And then, of course, there's the rest of the family. Of course, I miss them all. My sister's been 3 times, though, or 4 times. So that's fine. They're starting to come out now. So it's
And then
it's
and then soon, I mean, you're going to be hosting retreats there.
absolutely only small ones, because I'll have 4 spare bedrooms. Okay, and they're all big. Even the ones that aren't finished yet, they even with the bathrooms, they'll all have their capacity for double beds or twin beds. And I think I've got it so that I will have enough beds they can be joined together or separated. And at least one of the rooms, if necessary, could probably have 3 beds in. So it's either small, intimate retreats for 4 people, or if people want to share rooms, and I'm not talking sharing beds, they can always be separated, then I can potentially cope with more. But it's not something that I want to do week after week after week. This is something to be special and curated properly to get the effect that I have in my mind and my heart, because retreats are just so, I don't know, 10 a penny now, and so many of them I sit there and I think, how can that be a retreat? If there's 1,000 people on this retreat, how on earth can it be a retreat? Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, no, that just sounds like that's the worst in the world. But of course, it's also not the retreat that some people might expect, as in there's not going to be, spirulina and green smoothies at dawn and yoga on the terrace. I mean, yes, yoga, we can do yoga, not a problem. I have yoga teachers, I have masseurs, I have chefs. Yeah, we can make this quite almost like a feast for the soul.
Oh,
Uh,
does that sound good or what? I love that. A feast for the soul.
and that's more my intention of such retreats where people step out of their day to day. We don't necessarily have to do anything or sit in a group and chant and meditate or do anything if we don't want to. It could be, I mean, when it's ready, the proper pool will be there. I do have a pool. I put a pool last year on my first floor terrace, and the Italians think I am completely bonkers. They're like, you can't put a pool up there. It's like a glorified paddling pool, grown up paddling pool. But they come along and they scratch their heads and they're like, I did get the builder to put a couple of acro props under the terrace just in case, but it's only 2 meters by 4 meters, but it's enough to cool off. And and you can sit up there and it's quite jolly. But the proper pool when that gets built will be down on the first terrace below in the land. So it's there will be pools, there will be walking, we can go to the beach. There's honestly there's monasteries, there's history, there's vineyards, there's bio vineyards, there is so and food is just unbelievable. And the coast is ten minutes drive by car. It's probably 2 minutes if you could just be a bird and fly there, but it's just a bit windy.
Yeah.
And then once you hit the coast, you can go north or south, and it goes on forever. And there's beach after beach after beach, and they're all different. So there's beaches, and there's history, there's arty stuff. There's one whole village, and it's like an open art gallery, and they are very famous for bees and honey. And all around the village, on the outside of houses, there are mosaics, and they're all something to do with bees. Well, no, there is some that are religious around the church, but most of them are to do with bees, and they're absolutely incredible. They have a competition every year, and artists paint whatever the theme is. They paint something, and then the winner gets chosen, and their artwork gets turned into a mosaic and put on somebody's house.
Wow, how beautiful.
It's you can't explain some of this, and even just driving to the supermarket and back. I come back and my breath is taken away by the sights of the vines all year round. There's either nothing there, or then they're just sprouting, or then they're full. And watching it, this whole tapestry of earth just changing color, changing texture, it's absolutely beautiful. And so I drive around and I'm in awe every day. And then of course I can drive further into the mountains and beyond. And every journey is just, well, it's a delight.
Wow. I mean, it's so beautiful watching and listening to you because your heart is just absolutely overflowing. And, it's, wow, just love that energy that you just bring around that and how deeply satisfying and rich your life feels to me, the way that you describe it, even though, your home isn't ready yet for retreats, but it's like that's just part of the process. And yeah, amazing, amazing. And oh, it just sounds so wonderful. I can't wait for the time when you say we're open and let's do the first retreat. That's going to be very exciting. And we'll include in the details any links that people can use to get hold of you and, be on a waiting list or whatever to experience the joy. I mean, it just sounds so magnificent.
I tell you something, I find new things all the time. Last year, I went basket weaving. That might sound completely bonkers, but there's a little bit of me that has always wanted to weave a basket. How do you do this? And I mean, it's not huge, but I made it, and I did this one afternoon, and I absolutely love it. So I can say now, yeah, I've done that, and there may be another one this year, and I can make some kind of different basket. I went to a jewelry workshop and made some stacking rings out of silver. There's artists, there's crafters, there's I know some amazing chefs. One who's a forager, and so when she puts things on it, it's all foraged goods. And then there's another guy who is Italian, but he had a restaurant in Tunbridge Wells for many years. And now he's here. He has a restaurant at home. And once a month or so, they open up the house, and it's only a small, intimate thing. They don't have room for that many, but you have this amazing meal. And he also does other adventures, day tours and things. And I have seen some fascinating things that way as well. Some of the vineyards and the like that I've seen, which I wouldn't have known that they were there.
So out of interest, like I'm wondering, like, is Italy like that everywhere, or have you just found this little haven of magic and creativity?
Um, I don't think it's like this everywhere, to be honest. But I haven't travelled much of the rest of Italy recently. I've been in Venice. That's completely different. I've been in Rome. That is bonkers. Um, and very much like, apart from the historical stuff, it's still a very bustling, busy town. Same with Naples. Although I haven't been to Naples for a long time. So what I think about Abruzzo, which is where the region in which I live, what I've learned about it is it's almost like the forgotten part of Italy. It's the part that tourists, if they're going to the south, they whiz straight by it, straight through it, or they focus on the other coast, Naples and Rome, and so on. And Abruzzo, for whatever reason, has been completely underfunded by central government over the years. So it's underfunded, and it hasn't had even the level of infrastructure investment that other parts of Italy have. And so I often say to people, I believe life goes on here pretty much how it's always gone on for centuries. The main difference is they've got tractors now instead of horses. So the vineyards are probably the same. The olive groves are the same. There are people here who get up. This is the infuriating bit at the moment. They're up so early, the dog's awake at the crack of dawn because all the farmers are up and there's tractors start trundling by. But it's the same. They're up at the crack of dawn. They live how farmers have lived for centuries. They're up at first light and they go to bed when it gets dark, and they they farm. In this part of the world, it's olives and grapes. Obviously, is the main, but the fruit and veg is also for the fruit and veg tastes like fruit and veg. Tomatoes taste like tomatoes. They're not forced.
Mm.
And the
And
fruit, my neighbours, I mean, it's so abundant. My neighbours have got, I don't know how many mandarin and orange trees that they've got. When they were ripe last autumn, they just kept turning up on my doorstep with another box of mandarins or another box of oranges. And it's just like she's like, juice those ones, do those, eat them. And you just everybody has fruit and chickens, and it's just amazing how they share it.
And how do you feel being the only Brit there? Like how have they responded to your presence in their hometown?
Well, if I tell you on the 7th of July, when I got the keys to this house and I put the keys in the lock for the first time, and it's my house. And that is immortalized. My son took a photo and then he painted a picture of it, which he sent me for my 60th birthday, which was like 3 weeks later. So that is just so special. So that was captured. But the old lady who lives over the road, Conchetta, she's about 82 or 83 now. She came out and starts talking to me. And of course, I knew very little Italian, but she just says, welcome, welcome. And she put her arms out and gave me a big hug.
Oh,
And so she is, her son lives over there, his wife, her grandson is the farmer. So he lives around the corner, but he's there. That's where he parks his tractor. So he's in and out of there all the time. Her daughter, this is a tiny village, but we have like an underwear shop. All the proper brand stuff, bras and knickers on the corner, which is quite odd. But she runs that. So they sort of adopted me. Next door, the other side, so that those are the people over the road. Next door, I have the family there. They invited me for Christmas Eve the first year I was here, which is so special because that's family time. There was 20 of them around the table, plus various small people running around. The TV was on. They're playing carols on the phones for the kids. They're all talking at once. And then suddenly they all look at me and they all start asking me questions in Italian. And I'm like, so they adopted me and they're lovely. I didn't have any parking out here to start with. And I used to park just around the corner in the square, which is fine. But the man next door, he stopped me and he said, "Don't park here. I have plenty of room. Park on my drive." So before we created parking spaces here, I always parked on his drive. And then my friend down the road, the one with all the orange trees, now that I have got her to slow down in Italian, we can have some beautiful conversations. So because well, I understand more now. And so there's that. Then I have another friend who is half English, half Italian, more Italian because she was here. Her dad's Italian or was Italian, and she was here from when she was about 11, I think. She's married to an Italian, but he lived in Canada for a while as well. So they both speak English beautifully, and she's absolutely uh, brilliant as well. For looking out for me and looking after me, especially when I had this issue with my eyes. They've all rallied round.
it's so beautiful that sense that you do truly belong there. That that is your home, the way that you've described it. But even listening to how you've been welcomed into the area, and I know that we were going to cover a couple of other things about how you follow your heart, but I kind of don't want to go from the energy of this beautiful house and home that you've described that is so um where you're so deeply connected to that part of the land, not just Italy, but that part of the land. And that feels very, very special.
It is. It's so special, but in my mind, it's all connected. It's. I just feel like I am living in the core of abundance. it's all around me, and I can go out every morning, even in the depths of winter. It's not always that cold. I can go out and I can look at the mountain, I can look at the view and go, oh, this is just awesome. And it's so enriching, so energizing, I suppose, is the word. And yeah, living in the heart of abundance. And I can also say that I can go out there every morning and just feel grateful for the fact that I'm here. So we know that all about abundance and gratitude and focusing on those things, that's how you get more of it. That's how you come back to love. And it's part of how we need to process everything to arrive back at really what I think is our mission on earth, to be love, to find love, to be that all, what's the word, that all pervading piece of love, which we know um, is the fundamental makeup of our soul, if you like.
Hmm. So for anybody watching this that is in that potential of transition, they're in a situation that's not really doing it for them or not enough. It might be perfectly fine, but not really enriching the heart. What would you say? Because that, from shifting, particularly actually from a relatively comfortable position, it's probably a harder change than shifting from something that's become intolerable. Although I think every change I find, like, I love change and I find it really daunting. So the typical Libran. But what would you say to somebody that's on that cusp and thinking, I would love to be brave enough or rich enough or clever enough or whatever it might be to make that major change in my life? What would you say to them right now if they're hesitating on the edge of that cliff?
Are we talking about not being quite sure? Because I think you mentioned that it's relatively comfortable, but perhaps it's not enough. And this sometimes, if there hasn't been something catastrophic happened, this is where people are, and it's that acceptance of what is, that not wanting to rock the boat, shift the status quo. It's okay. And I would say, ask yourself, is it really okay? Is it really okay? Is this what I want my life to be? Is this what I want the rest of my life to look like? Is it enough? Should it be enough? Are you just settling? I mean, this is lots of questions here, but that's where I always start. It's lots of questions, questions that are designed to help people go deep in and find out who they really are and what they really want. So the first thing is to explore some of that, some of those patterns, and ask, well, what do you really want? But before you can even ask that question, there has to be a decision. There has to be a decision somewhere that, based on this isn't enough, I have to make a change. Not I might, or I'm thinking about it. No, absolutely, to be true to myself, to be within my own integrity, following my intuition, not ignoring it. Something has to change. So once the decision is made, I made the decision I was coming here, and people thought I had gone completely mad to move to a country where I didn't speak the language at the grand old age of 60 on my own. They're like, have you completely lost the plot? And I'm like, no, I'm here and I'm thriving. And yeah, there's been some roller coaster moments. That's life. So the first thing is making that decision, admitting to yourself that something has to change. This is one of the biggest challenges that many of my clients have, that they cannot admit to anybody, nor even themselves, that something's not right. that something needs to change. Let's face it, as women, we're so used to looking after everybody, making everything right, juggling all the plates, working and looking after the family and parents and everything. We do everything for everybody and nothing for ourselves. And sometimes sometimes it happens, you come smack face to face with it, and you get the unexpected realization that something has to change. But even then, people don't want to face it. So it's that make the decision.
What's just come up for me there is I wonder actually whether women might find it easier because we're talking about trying to avoid change, but we women, right, we can't. We get the menopause, right? And then it's like, well, beyond here there be dragons kind of thing. No, nothing stays the same when we have to go through menopause. So I'm not suggesting that it's a negative thing, but it does change everything, doesn't it? And so maybe that's the time. It's like everything is changing anyway. It can feel like we have absolutely no control over what's happening to our hormones or whatever. And I know that there are lots of ways of ameliorating that anyway, through things like diet and exercise and what have you. But yeah, that moment that we women, we don't get away with it. Things change anyway. So we might as well take our courage in our hands and ask those questions, because I can imagine, asking that question, is it okay if I spend the rest of my life doing this? The moment that you say no, you kind of have to act on it then. So, you so I can quite see why it's so tempting to just go, it's fine. You know.
Yeah, it's easy.
So,
It's
yeah.
sometimes it's much easier to settle, but settling doesn't actually soothe the soul. Really, it doesn't fill the heart. Things that once filled the heart no longer do, and unfortunately, some of those things that happen when women hit that certain age, you throw menopause into the mix. It's there, and so it is chaos when suddenly there's brain fog and there's memory loss and all of the rest of it that comes with there's all the physical stuff going on with menopause, which clearly varies from person to person. I am not a believer that the first step is the doctor and HRT, but we'll save that for another day, because that always opens up a big debate. I managed mine naturally on my own, because the first thing out of a doctor's mouth was, well, you're in menopause, of course you'll have to go on HRT. And I went, oh no, I won't. And his face was shocked, but you have to. I said, who says I have to? So I went off and did some research and
Yeah.
and managed it. And I know others have a very tricky journey with it. But sometimes I think some of that whole how to deal with menopause is also tied up in everything else that is going on in somebody's life at the same time, which adds extra difficulty in there. I, for one, was never, oh my God, now I'm not really a whole woman and I can't have children anymore. I never went through that, but I know a lot of women grieve that. Even women who've had children, I could perhaps understand it. Perhaps if you haven't had children, but women that haven't had children have also then been grieving this loss of their fertility. Now, maybe I'm unusual, but that didn't hit me like that. It just didn't. But I do know that the whole emotional turmoil of that phase of a woman's life, which, let's face it, it can happen like from very early, and some people are still in their 60s and it's still going on. Mine was early, so maybe that accounts for something. But when that turmoil is going on, that's usually when everything else is chaotic as well, and all the other changes are happening. So it's quite often it's like the rug has been pulled out from under people. Everything they know has changed or changes almost in an instant. That's why it can be quite catastrophic.
And so maybe that's the time to come and buy your house in Abruzzo in Italy, is when everything has hit the fan. And so you might as well explore the changes that your heart would love, because something is changing anyway. But Liz, this has just
Absolutely.
been the most wonderful journey following you through your stories of what prompted you to look for the property, to find it, to focus on that, no matter what, to just not think, oh, somebody's bought it, oh well. I mean, you just didn't let that go, and that's so exciting to know how powerfully you've created the life that you really love, and that you help others, not necessarily in the same way, but there's that kind of, I feel like you would, what, like hold their hand metaphorically with the same kind of passion and dedication that you held yourself to your true, what desires, your true heart, your true self.
Absolutely. Everybody I work with, there's the starting point that I ask is, where are you now? What are you not comfortable with? What needs to change? Whatever that is, whether it's small or large, then that's where I meet them. And so there's coaching, there's mentoring, there's business stuff, there's lifestyle stuff, there's some healing. We haven't even really talked about healing. I do all this healing stuff as well, and people get what they need uh, in the moment, and sometimes that's quite random. It's like, I think we just need to do a little exercise now, or how about a touch of healing, or I'll send you this. Um, so there's I believe that I work on many dimensions, and I also believe that we are multi-dimensional beings that are connected through time and space. And most of us only have the slightest clue about what our potential is, what our brain capacity is. If we can uncalcify all our brains, what we could actually achieve is phenomenal. And I like to think that some of the work I do is helping, particularly women, to, if you like, uncalcify what has stopped them, what has blocked them from 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 doing what they want. And yes, everybody makes choices to get to a certain point, and then they suddenly realize they're not where they thought they were going, and then that's when they go, how do I get out of here? It's like they've made their choice, and it's now
Yeah,
like it's one of those what the moments. But and that's really
beautiful.
where
I
I
can
can
just,
come in.
yeah. Well, I really want to recommend anybody watching just to get in touch with you, Liz, if they need a helping hand to explore what they can change in their lives, what their hearts would love to change, and to know that you've already walked this path so courageously ahead of them. Right? That's what's so important to me, is that if somebody's going to help me, I'd like to know that they've already done it for themselves. So you're a wonderful role model, and thank you so much, Liz. Patients like this.
Okay, thank you for having me.